Welcome to the Wire to Wire podcast. As always, it's me, your host Yusuf. Now, without further ado, let's just get right to it. So, media personality and sports commentator Stephen A. Smith is quite a polarizing figure. What started off as a career in journalism blossomed into a lucrative media career where he now earns an upwards of $20 million per year just from ESPN alone. He is also having his name floated around as a potential presidential candidate in the 2028 election cycle. Now, Stephen A. Smith brings a lot of entertainment and hot takes to sports media. Now, one of his biggest techniques is to be able to have a conflict with star athletes. He had issues with Glenn Big Dog Robinson back when he played for the Philadelphia 76ers, and they almost fought. But there was a moment where Stephen A. Smith even said that things could have turned violent. He recently had a confrontation, if you even want to call it that, with LeBron James. At one point, he was also very hypercritical of Kawhi Leonard, saying that he needs to retire. So you can see that there is a common element in all of these scenarios, and they involve Stephen A. Smith targeting certain players for different reasons. Now, I believe that this is part of his act. But if it's not broken, don't fix it. This has been working for him for decades. So naturally, he's going to revert back and do what he has always done throughout his career. Start drama with current players. His latest targets seem to be Tyrese Haliburton as well as Giannis Antetokounmpo. Now, Tyrese Haliburton of the Indiana Pacers is currently playing in the finals. This is impressive because no one had Indiana coming out of the Eastern Conference, let alone being 2 games away from winning a championship at time of this recording. So with him being in a position to potentially win an NBA championship and having the type of playoff run that he's been having, you would think at least he earned the ability to be in the conversation as being a superstar of the NBA. But not according to Stephen A. Smith, who believes that he does not belong in the conversation. So let's listen to what Stephen A. Smith had to say about Tyrese Haliburton not being a superstar.
You show up in the clutch and you make big shots doesn't make you a superstar. That is my point of what I'm saying. Tyrese Haliburton can ball. The brother is a star. People who labeled him overrated were just hating. They should be ashamed of themselves. The brother can play. All of that true. But when I think superstar, I'm thinking Steph. I'm thinking LeBron. I'm thinking people like that.
Careers,
I'm thinking Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. I'm just saying.
That doesn't mean it can't be, y'all. Yeah, you do have to give him some time.
After he said that, Tyrese Haliburton had this to say.
Tyrese, you impact the game a lot of different ways, not just scoring, obviously, but when you don't score, there is sometimes some chatter. How cognizant were you of that chatter the last couple of days? Was it a conversation you had with coaches at all? And how do you go about kind of calibrating that balance between the playmaking and scoring in general?
Yeah, I think the commentary is always going to be what it is. You know, most of the time, the talking heads on the major platforms, I couldn't care less, honestly. Like, what do they really know about basketball? But I think as a group, you know, and watching film myself, seeing where I can get better is important. And, you know, I mean, at a time like this, I'm not really on social media as much. I try to stay off it as much as I can, but you know, you see it, and you know, ESPN might be on in my house, and there it is, and you know, it is what it is. But I think just seeing where I can be better is the most important thing, and having that reflection with myself.
Not one to be outdone, Stephen A. Smith then replied by saying this.
Let's get to Haliburton, because this bothers me, Magic. I'm going to tell you why it bothers me. First of all, the media includes folks who played. Charles Barkley played. Kenny Smith played, Shaq played, Kendrick Perkins played, right. Jay Williams played, right. Markeith and Marcus Morris played. So, first of all, let's get that out the way. We're not going to question their knowledge about basketball. Mm-hmm. And you can try to question mine all you want to. I've been covering the NBA for 30 years. Good luck with that. Yeah. But here's my problem. It's the sensitivity, Magic. We're talking about a Tyrese Haliburton. You're averaging 20.8 points a game on 48% shooting in wins. you're averaging 12.6 points on 43% shooting in losses. So the subject has been about whether or not he's a superstar and all of this other stuff, which I don't believe he is. Yeah. He's the guy I wanted the Knicks to draft years ago. He's a damn good player.
Right.
It was the media that came out and said, you're not overrated. It was your peers who voted you overrated, not the media. You see how slick these dudes get? They try to point into the media. No, it's your colleagues. It's your contemporaries, right, present and former, who were questioning you. People like myself and others, other than the actual superstar debate, have done nothing but rave about Tyrese Haliburton. So the heightened level of sensitivity that you want to give off, like Magic said, focus on the damn finals. You ain't win it yet. You still got two to go. And oh, by the way, just in case he was talking about me, my brother, I'm not going away.
No, you're not.
I'm going to be here for a while. You said, read the news? I'm going to be here for a while. So next year and the year after that and the year after that and the year after that, I'm going to be here. And players far more accomplished and far more superior have made their efforts trying to call me out. How has that worked out?
So you guys heard the full exchange. This has become Stephen A. Smith's MO. He will find a target and speak disparagingly about them in hopes that they will acknowledge him, and then he will try to convert that attention into access. Now, Stephen A. Smith is an interesting guy. He talks tough like he is willing to throw hands, but let's be very clear. He does not have the ability to do that. I remember when he was having a back and forth with Kevin Durant, and he was saying to Kevin Durant, you don't want to make an enemy out of me, and he made it look like he was going to pull up on him and throw hands. Listen, Stephen A. Smith is not that dude. And it's funny because when LeBron confronted him, which I thought was very low and disgusting on the part of LeBron, it did also show that Stephen A. Smith wasn't even in a position to try and defend himself. He almost got beat up by Glenn Big Dog Robinson, and he's not willing to throw hands with any of these players. So I don't understand why he talks like this. Well, I do understand why he talks like this, but he knows he's not about that life, and everyone knows he's not about that life. But he's not doing this so he can get involved in combat with these players. He wants to aggravate these players in an effort to get their attention. Once he gets their attention, he's going to try and speak with them behind the scenes to try and establish some kind of rapport with them so he can have direct access to them as a member of the media. Although he may be a media personality who gets paid for giving his takes and giving his opinion, his claim to fame was being a journalist and to put out stories and having sources, right, to reinforce some of these stories. So he still wants to be able to be in a position to do that. He wants to give hot takes and share stories and share his opinion and have it be backed by sources. And ideally, he would like for those sources to be the players themselves or even people within their inner circle. So this is what it's all about. It's about having that access so he can further feel as though he has credibility, which in turn enhances his value as a media personality, but also increases his value and his cachet with ESPN. So he is doing a formula that has worked for him for decades. Start drama. Stephen A. Smith has been in the game long enough. He knows Tyrese Haliburton has that superstar quality. He knows that this guy is a clutch player. He knows that this guy is elevating his profile and that he is making a name for himself in the basketball world. This is how Stephen A. Smith is going to get his attention. If you listen to what Tyrese Haliburton had to say, he didn't explicitly or even directly mention Stephen A. Smith by name. But Stephen A. Smith took it upon himself as though he was the recipient of these comments. So he can put himself in a position to do what he's always done. Start beef in hopes of getting his attention. So that's all that he's doing here. That's why he was going so hard at Kawhi Leonard all those years, saying that he should retire. It's because he wanted either Kawhi Leonard's uncle or someone in his circle to reach out to him, to confront him, and he could be able to use that interaction as a way to get direct access to him. So he can break stories on Kawhi Leonard or give analysis and give takes as though he has someone on the inside and he has direct knowledge of what's going on. When Kawhi Leonard was a free agent back in 2019, everyone was trying to position themselves as though they were some kind of Kawhi Leonard insider, right? And it bothered Stephen A. Smith that he was on the outside looking in and that he had no direct intel on what was going on. In regards to Kevin Durant, it's the same thing. He just wanted to have that access. That's why he was doing what he was doing. Eventually, he got the chance to go on his platform, right, the boardroom, and they got to have a sit-down conversation. And he even got involved in some of the productions that they had going on with Kevin Durant's media company. This is the game that Stephen A. Smith plays. And even recently, when they were having a little back and forth, what did Stephen A. Smith say? If I don't know anything about basketball, then why did you have me on your platform and why did you have me involved in some of your projects? So he's spilling the game right there. This is how it's played. This is what it's about. In regards to his little beef or whatever dust up he had with LeBron, Stephen A. Smith and LeBron are two sides of the same coin. They're both narcissists who believe that they are bigger than the programs that they are under. LeBron believes that he is bigger than the NBA, and Stephen A. Smith thinks that he is bigger than ESPN. LeBron believes that he's a kingmaker of the NBA, and Stephen A. Smith thinks he's a kingmaker at ESPN. So these two guys are very similar in their personality traits. So it's very obvious to me why they don't get along very well. But this idea of Stephen A. Smith wanting to be a kingmaker, this brings me to my next point that involves Giannis Antetokounmpo. So Stephen A. Smith, like I mentioned earlier, believes that he's a kingmaker and that he can move the needle. Giannis is a superstar player who right now plays in a small market for the Milwaukee Bucks. He has that old school mentality that you stay loyal to the organization that you started with. However, the media for the past decade or so, I would say, have been using their platforms and their voice to try and convince players that they need to leave small market teams and go play for the big market teams. Stephen A. Smith is a huge fan of the New York Knicks, and there is nothing he would love more than to see Giannis in a New York Knicks uniform. So he found a new target as well in Giannis that he wants to try and exert his influence by shaming him, downplaying him, anything in an effort to try to get Giannis to want to feel compelled that he has to play in a big city. So I want you to listen to these comments that he made about him.
What's one word you would use to describe Giannis's career if he doesn't win another title?
Underachiever. Underachiever. I'm going to tell you why. He's one of the greatest players to ever play the game. Over the last 4 years, minimum 200 games, Giannis, second in the league, 30.4 points per game. Fifth in the league, 11.7 rebounds per game. Fifth among qualifiers at 58% from the field. And 9 All-NBA selections in his career, 9 All-Star selections, and top 10 finishes in league MVP voting 9 times. And he has more of that than postseason series wins. That's unacceptable. It's not his fault. I'm not in any way pointing to him or what he's not doing. I'm saying that you don't look at somebody that dominant, that fantastic, with that kind of fire in his belly to compete on a night in, night out basis, and all you have is one championship to show for it. He's got 1 playoff series win in the last 4 years. Ain't his fault. He was hurt a couple of times.
Right.
Got upset by Miami, Jimmy Butler and the crew. Jimmy and them gave it to him, no doubt. But this year, Damian Lillard goes down, you lose to Indiana. We understand all of that. But to know Giannis, his career, his accomplishments, his cachet, and to say 1 championship Nah. No. You definitely expect more than that.
So you guys heard the comments. Now, there are many people in mainstream sports media, and even some of these former players who are masquerading as independent content creators are compromised. Many of them, right, even despite having played the game, they still speak as though they are casuals despite having played the game. And many of the people who are covering the game also speak as though they are casuals. So they like the idea of star players going to the big cities, playing in the big markets. So this is Stephen A. Smith's attempt to try and apply pressure to Giannis by planting a narrative so he could leave Milwaukee and go elsewhere to play for a big city team and try to compete for a championship there. Now, they're trying to do this through means of saying that if he does not win any more championships, then he is an underachiever. And that is going to be the narrative that many casuals will hear. And then they'll start parroting the same talking point, that if Giannis doesn't win anymore, then he's going to be considered an underachiever. Listen to how contradictory he was being in what he was saying. On one hand, he's saying that, oh, we get all that these guys, that there's injuries that are happening and his team is not at full strength and they're not fully healthy. But at the same time, yeah, I'm going to blame him for it. Like, that's crazy. You're literally talking out of both sides. What he's doing is equivalent to a judge saying, like, yeah, we know you didn't commit the crime, but we really need to get a conviction, so we'll go ahead and say that you did anyways. So this is the approach that he's going to be taking to try and get Giannis to leave the Milwaukee Bucks for a big market team. But he's also trying to establish himself as someone who is a kingmaker in the NBA world, right? That he is not just going to be known as a media personality, but he is going to be a sports media personality that can move the needle and can dictate partially through his coverage where players are going to go, and he will have an influence in those decisions. So this is really the long game for Stephen A. Smith. He wants to get involved with Tyrese Haliburton early because he sees the trajectory that he's going on, and he wants to be able to position himself to be part of his inner circle and have that access. But he also wants to be able to establish himself as a powerhouse in the basketball world. And he is going to do this by targeting Giannis and telling him that he needs to leave Milwaukee because he's not going to win there anymore. And if he doesn't win anymore, then he's going to be an underachiever. So leave, go to a big city market, play for one of those historical franchises that are in a big market. And this is what he's trying to do. This is his end game. And I don't believe that someone like Stephen A. Smith should be taken seriously. I have another episode that's out about him playing solitaire while a game is going on. Now, you guys have to check out that episode because I would say, a pretty comprehensive analysis on that and what it represents. But to be honest, when I see stuff like this, it does kind of remind me of what Jason Whitlock has been saying about Stephen A. Smith for years. Right? They've had their little back and forth, and Jason Whitlock has been on a rampage exposing Stephen A. Smith and saying that he has been groomed for where he is at sports media and that he is a plant. Now that, to me, I'm not going to piggyback off of what Jason Whitlock is saying. They have their own history with each other. They have their own thing going on. But when I see stuff like this, I do find it to be a little bit funny because Jason Whitlock did say many years ago that Stephen A. Smith's book was written as though they're trying to groom him for running for president. And now, obviously, we hear all the conversation about him being a potential candidate in 2028. So I do find that part of things to be interesting. I'm not willing to go all the way there yet, but it is something that I've heard, and it's something that I make a mental note of. But I will say that it is a sad state of affairs that for a job as critical and complex of being a president, a guy like Stephen A. Smith is actually being taken seriously by some people simply because of the entertainment value that he brings to sports. I don't believe he has the political acuity or the acumen to even be considered for the job, But that's a whole different conversation to be having another time. But that's all I got for you guys today. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast and share it with your people. You can also follow me and the podcast on social media. You can check out my books. All of these links will be in the description. Until next time.